All right. Now we're gonna get to the point that everybody wanted to listen to.
To hear about.
This is it. We need to call this section something, uh, like I don't know, shitting on the FIA, or
The thing that
like
grinds my gears.
yeah, Formula One or FIA feedback or FIA something. We need to come up with something creative.
Some clever thing. We'll think about it.
Like this just needs to be like its own section every fucking weekend. Now, like it's the sport is so good, and like I can name any other sport. Like if I watch basketball, I'm like, oh wow, watching basketball is amazing. I never think of the people that run basketball as like who are they as an entity. I don't think of them. I'm just
Right.
watching the sport, right? If I watch American football, I'm watching a game, and I never think of like the people that are running the game. I'm just watching the sport. And same
Correct.
with baseball. Although in baseball you have the umpires,
The
which
umpires will interfere a lot,
yeah,
and people hate that. I hate that about baseball, but yes.
yeah. Then there's also soccer, which also has FIFA, which it's not always clear. But in Formula One, every weekend there's a story about the people that run the fucking sport. The FIA just is that now this ever like this omniscient. How do you say it?
Omnipotent,
Omnipresent.
omnipresent, sure.
Yeah, like they're always there. Like now they're just like this omnipresent entity. Every single weekend we're talking about the fucking FIA, and I'm like, I don't want to talk about this fucking entity. I just want to watch the sport.
Yeah.
Why does it always have to exist? Like, I know that you exist, but you're not supposed to be important. You're just supposed to run the game.
Exactly. You're supposed to be it's like the referees. They're supposed to be there to just sort of keep the rules in check, but they're not supposed to like make up the rules in the middle of the game. Like they're not supposed to. They're not supposed to be like, you know what? In this situation, I'm not gonna call that a penalty. I'm not gonna do it. Just too many variables. I don't think so. It's like this every fucking weekend. I mean, this weekend was actually kind of interesting because I was watching it with my girlfriend, and she turned to me and she was like, it's kind of funny, but like I don't understand, why does Formula One always have like these funky rules? And I was just like, I know, right? Like it doesn't make any sense. Like this shouldn't happen. Like the whole every weekend feels like an arbitrary set of like new things. It's like, oh, every other time this was supposed to be a penalty for whatever reason, like clear penalty, but for this time they're making an excuse or they're making some sort of exception, and it's like, but why? Like it's constant interference in like moments where like there's precedent, but at the same time there's no clarity, and it leaves you really feeling like okay, like we need to establish now what the sport is first. Like we need to establish down the rules first so that everybody can play with them, like in an American football type of way, where like everybody understands that it's a complex game, it's a complicated game, but everybody understands the fucking rules, right? And if there's a rule down, you follow the rule.
Yeah,
and
like in a sport as complex as American football is not an easy sport.
It's not easy
for anybody to understand, and it has so many rules and so many nuances. Like if you catch the ball, if the knee touched the ground, if you had possession, if like there's all these crazy things, and no matter what, the people that watch American football, they understand everything that happens there. Every time that there's a rule or like a call that needs to be made, they do the slow motion and they look at all of the angles and they determine, based on the rules, we all know what that call is going to be. Even the audience knows what the call is going to be.
The audience, the announcers, they're kind of like, they bring in the experts and they're like, look here, like his leg touched the ground before the ball was out of his hands. That's a down ball, whatever.
Yeah, and then when the announcers are also saying like, this is going to be this rule, they're educating the people at home and I appreciate it. And I'm like, oh, now I learned that new thing about the sport and the reason why the ruling was this as opposed to this other thing. Because in this specific occasion, there was this little nuance that changed the rules. And like you appreciate that from the announcers and the commentators while you're watching the sport. But in Formula One, it's actually, I think the announcers are even like probably told by the FIA, like, or by Formula One, like, you cannot shed on our sport. You cannot say like, oh, that's a penalty for sure, and then complain that it wasn't a penalty. Like, I think the announcements probably get like, you cannot say that about our sport. And I'm like, why? That's a thing on every other sport, but Formula One just doesn't like to look bad. They just switch the rules back and forth, and they just don't want to look bad. And then the announcers are also like now afraid of educating the viewer when they shouldn't be. They should let us know what's going on. That's why they're there for.
Yeah, exactly. Like there was an occasion this weekend, and there's a few incidents that we can discuss, but there was an occasion where like Martin Brundle was trying to explain the rules about like if the race goes up by so many hours, like you cannot broadcast it for so long, so it needs to end. But when he finished saying that, he was like, at least that's according to the rules. At least that's what the rules say. Who knows what the FIA is going to do? Because that's how we all feel. It's like, oh, you know what, the FIA, the race is supposed to end, but I wouldn't have been surprised if the FIA would have been like, no, we're finishing this race. And like that's what would have happened. I would have been like, well, I guess that's just what we're doing this weekend because that's what they said that we can do. These people apparently can decide whatever they want.
Yeah, so they can change the rules in the middle of the fucking race. And we're all supposed to like, I guess that's what they do now. Like that was a clear example. Like, don't tell me that if you're a Formula One fan and you were watching the race, that you knew for a fact that the race had to end within 2 hours. Like, we all knew that, us as viewers, because in Spa last year, it went for this whole fiasco of a race. Yeah. And so this year we knew that we're coming with brand new rules, that the race, once it begins, there's a 2-hour clock that it will just run down. And when that 2-hour clock is down, the race is over no matter what. We all know that. But don't tell me that now, that even though you knew that you knew for sure that the FIA was gonna follow that rule. Like, you were probably like, are they gonna follow that rule? Or, well, there's probably like just 10 more laps after that. So so the FIA was probably like, oh, we can probably finish the race without hitting that 2-hour mark. Yeah. Like, I thought, like, I don't know what's gonna happen. I really don't know.
I was like, I don't know. And then they put the timer, and I was like, okay, I guess they're sticking to the timer. So I guess that's a good thing. Like, it felt weird actually that we were saying like consistent with the rules. I was like, oh, they're actually gonna enforce the rule. Okay, that's something. That's interesting. But
then on that same aspect, like, okay, you follow that rule, that's there, and then you have other rules that are just a shit show. Well, so like,
before that. Another thing that like stood out about the race timer was that like the race started and nobody knew that it had started. That was so strange. Even the
it started on their safety car conditions.
Yeah, the announcers were like going like, okay, so now they're cleaning the thing, and then all of a sudden you see like lap 2 out of like 70, 77 or 78, and they were like, oh, it looks like the race has started. And then like you heard Crofty like start using like his actual like race voice to like direct the race, but like it's kind of like nobody knew that the race was starting. I thought we were just doing like laps around to clean the track a little bit. We never got told that. The announcers didn't even know that, and then it was like, okay, now it's starting, and then I guess that this is when the timer also starts because the race now is going too long. It really strange stuff.
Yeah, I didn't realize that, but yeah, I remember that the race started and we were on lap 2, and it's like, oh, the race started. No, and I'm like, the race started, and I'm like, everybody shut up, I'm trying to listen to this race. Like, they just started. And then I'm like, what are the commentators saying? How come they didn't tell us? How come I didn't know that the race started?
How come like, it's a race, it's the most exciting part of the fucking race.
Yeah, like and then also like, oh, so there's no standing start, I guess. Like, and I'm like, okay, so now I gotta pay attention. When is the safety car? And I'm like, how does this happen? And then like also like it gets delayed. So apparently, First of all, the race didn't start on time. And the reason was because apparently there was a power outage. And then they couldn't do the standing procedure with the lights off, the lights out.
Oh, okay.
So apparently they couldn't do that. And therefore they had to delay the race. But also by the time they delayed it, the rain was coming. So they delayed it even further. But that's a rumor. That hasn't been confirmed by anybody.
Yeah.
Like that's like I saw that online and I'm like, but was that confirmed? Like nobody knows.
That they didn't say that in the race because the
announcers didn't say it.
Didn't know that,
the press didn't say it. Like no, there's no actual like the standing start procedure has been canceled because there's a power outage, so we have to delay it. And I'm like, if you tell me that, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. I understand there's powers outside of your control that will delay a race. I'm probably going to be upset, but I understand that it's not your fault. You cannot predict if there's a power outage in an entire country. If it happened, we don't know if it happened. Yeah. But the fact that you don't say it, assuming that it happened, that you don't say it, like how do you have the FIA race directors not communicate with the entire audience? It's like they're not watching the sport that they are running. How can this happen? I'm so confused at home the whole time, and it's only because how much knowledge I have of Formula One that I'm the one that has to put the puzzles together.
I know. Like the I guess another one of the incidents that happened through the race was after the red flag. After the race restarted, it's kind of like the announcers and I myself thought it's like, oh, this is gonna be a standing start. At least Leclerc's gonna get another chance. It's
gonna be exciting because we didn't get it at the beginning of the race.
Exactly. And then it's like, no, we're gonna do a rolling start. And it's kind of like, even the announcer was like, I thought we were like, it's dry, like there is not raining there. Like I thought like the rule was that like you're supposed to start on a rolling start when it's raining or when like the conditions don't like
when it's too dangerous.
Right, exactly. If the track is wet, that I mean, like if there's just one racing line, that I didn't think that was sufficient for them to have to do a rolling start. I was like, no, well, there's just gonna be a part of the track that's dry and another part that's like less dry. But that's what it is. It's the rule. You're supposed to follow that. Why didn't they follow that? They just they decided to waive it. No, we're gonna do a rolling start because we feel like doing a rolling start today. Because we are making this judgment on the moment, and it's like you don't know. You kind of you're the race director. Just follow what the fucking rules say. And then I don't know if you I mean if you're gonna do that. And then the DRS was the other thing. It's like,
oh, the DRS didn't open like
until like halfway through the race, and I'm just like, what is the fucking rule with the DRS? Like, I mean, I understand like it's still difficult. It's Monaco. It's still probably not gonna be any passing, but like, when are you supposed to open the fucking thing? When are you supposed to open the fucking thing? Because as I see it, you just decided to open it at some random lap.
Yep. Like, I mean, the way that I understand it, and I don't know what says in the rules. I think it's like if it's a dry race, DRS it's enabled. Should
be open. Yeah.
So like, if we go by those rules, and now it's us trying to put the pieces together, right? Because the FIA is just so inconsistent, and that we have now to fucking figure it out on ourselves. If you have a dry race and it begins, I think there's 2 laps before DRS is enabled.
Correct,
so let's go by those. Like the race begins, it's a dry race, 2 laps, DRS is enabled. Yeah. So there's a point in the race where you have to make a judgment. The race is now a dry race. There's in 2 laps, DRS will be enabled.
Correct.
Like, give me that announcement. But I can see that it's a dry race for a long time now. It's been 5-6 laps. And I'm like, where's the DRS? It's been a dry race for a while now. Why is it not on? Tell me the reason. Like, when is the lap that you determine that this race became a dry race? Like, you're supposed to be on top of that. That's your job.
And like most cars have dry tires. They came out of the red
Oh,
flag with dry tires. They're
yeah,
they're driving like at normal paces. Why aren't you activating the DRS? I mean, I understand like okay, so you activated the DRS. The driver is gonna go into maybe a wetter side of the track, and they're probably gonna slide around a little bit. But like that's what you're supposed to do with the DRS. Like you're supposed to try to like make passes. Sure, it's not gonna work. If it doesn't work, well, it doesn't work. But like drivers know that. Drivers, I mean, like they know.
they know that that's a risk that they're taking if they're
Yes,
gonna go for that move.
correct. And eventually the other side will start drying out too if people are using the DRS. So but I'm like, in the game, and I hate to keep bringing it up, but in the game it's pretty straightforward. If the race gets dry and people switch to like the dry compounds in 2 laps, it like boop, the DRS is back on, and that's it. It's pretty straightforward. I don't know why they have to keep like holding it back, like as if there's some sort of like exceptions for like how we feel about the state of the track. It's kind of like no, it's like what are the cars doing, and just activate it. Like I don't see what the big deal is. But anyways, sorry.
Yeah, so it's just like, I mean, issue after issue. We can talk about the next one that is also bothers me is like Verstappen crossing the pit line, the pit lane line, whatever. It's like Verstappen comes out of the pit lane, and then he drives over the yellow line, and every Formula One fan that knows the rules know like that's a 5-second penalty.
That's a penalty right there, easy.
He went over the pit, like it's like probably one of the first rules in Formula One that you learn when like you're watching the sport. You cannot cross that yellow line coming out of the pits. It's part of the rules. We all know it.
For no reason, you can do that. It's the easiest penalty you ever like get taught. Yeah.
Like we all know if you play the game and you go over that line, you'll get a penalty.
Immediately,
it's very clear, and I'm telling you, like I think this was one of the first rules I learned when I watched Formula One, and it's kind of exciting to know because once you know it,
you always
you're always like, oh, did that guy touch it? Did that guy fucking went over the line? And like it makes you feel like you're part, like you're a fan of the sport now. It's like I know something about the sport that you're always now looking out for, and it feels good to know. And in this case, you see Verstappen going over the line, and there's no penalty.
It didn't even get noted as an incident. Didn't even get noted.
They noted it on Perez. It's like Perez incident out of the pit lanes noted, and I'm like, the fuck? Did Perez also go over the pit lane? And I'm like, what is going on?
It's like, why? Like, what happened? Like, explain to the announcers were saying it like Verstappen went over, and then they played the replay like 2 times as if the camera director is like, FIA, look at what happened. Look at this happen. Do something. And it's like they don't do anything. I mean, it's like I understand that like Verstappen is like the championship leader. You don't want to influence those results, but he's on third. And Leclerc is in fourth. Like this 5-second penalty really matters, and like the rules are fucking obvious on this type of shit. It doesn't matter what what the dynamics of the racers are. You still have to enforce the rules, and they didn't. And then Ferrari appealed it after the race, and they didn't grant it to them.
Oh, they protested it.
Yeah, and signing some sort of like memo or discussion that they had with the drivers at the beginning of the weekend, and it's kind of like, why are discussions at the beginning of the weekend overruling the actual rules? I just don't get that. It's so bizarre to me that like, what at the beginning of every race are we gonna get told now what the rules are gonna be and what rules don't count anymore? Like, what is going on? Like this is putting like some serious doubt on like what the consistency of the sport. I mean, they're getting so many viewers nowadays, and they can't, to fucking save their lives, just keep the rules consistent. They can't tell you, like the announcers are shy and afraid of telling you what the rules are because all of a sudden you look like
they don't know if
fools.
they're going to be enforced. Yeah.
Right.
If the announcers say like that's a penalty, and Martin Brundle is so knowledgeable about the sport.
Yes.
Like incredibly knowledgeable. And if he is afraid of saying like that's a penalty, like when he says this, like I know what I saw, and that should be a penalty. And I'm like, say it with confidence. We all know that should be a penalty, but now he's afraid of saying it because if there's no penalty that occurs, like you're saying, he's gonna look like a fool.
Yeah.
People are gonna be like, he said it was a penalty and it wasn't. That guy must not know what he's talking about.
Exactly. And maybe it makes the sport look bad, but the sport should look bad. It actually already looks bad. It confuses people. It shouldn't confuse people. It confuses fans that have been watching this shit like for forever. People, you want your fans to pay attention to the rules and to be engaged and to like think critically about what's happening in the race, because that's the fun part of the sport. I just don't understand why they're constantly betraying the fans and the announcers and the rules by changing all of these things.
Yeah.
Like, just I mean, I hear you say it because it's so simple, but it's like, just follow the fucking rules. Do what it's in the goddamn book that you have for the rules, and do what it says there. It doesn't matter who's winning. Just do it,
Yeah. For that specific penalty, they said like, and this is like a fucking gray line, and there cannot be these gray lines in the rules. It's like, it says that like you're not allowed to go over the yellow line, but like another part, I think one of the rules says like your car must stay at the right hand side of the yellow line at all times, right? But then another rule says that the car like must not go over it. And then like, because the tire from Verstappen didn't go fully over the line, like it didn't fully cross it, then it's not a penalty.
Like, that's
and
so
like,
fucking stupid.
And then I'm like, this is such a stupid loophole, because now you set up a precedent that every fucking race from now until the end of the season, people can just put their car on top of the yellow line and they're not going to get a penalty.
That they're just going to step over it.
Yeah.
Because now that's something they can account for.
Yeah. And then like you start, it just makes your fucking sport look like such a clown show every single time. And like, I just wish that the drivers would all get into like a group, like a union amongst themselves, and be like, let's fucking exploit the rules every fucking weekend until they like, just so we show how ridiculous their fucking sport is. And that's what like Alonso should do, just like fucking like.
And you're gonna tell me that if Juan Joe or Joe won you, or if Yuki Tsunoda had done that like he would have gotten away with it? I just don't think so. Yeah. I just don't think so. I think they see that and they're like, oh, easy, like 5-second penalty. All right. And so sorry, Yuki. I guess you just couldn't keep it in the lines, right?
Yeah.
But Verstappen couldn't keep it in the lines. Why are we making exceptions here?
Yeah. And then like and then it's not just against Verstappen. In Saudi Arabia, Leclerc did the same shit, but like not coming out, but like coming in. He was going over the pit lane entry every single fucking lap, like for 3 or 4 laps. Leclerc just kept going over the fucking pit lane entry, and then he's not getting a penalty for it. That should have been like 20-second penalty, like 5 seconds every time that he infringed that, and then he's not being punished, not even a warning. And I'm like, just like, you're setting a very bad precedent where like you're nitpicking who gets a penalty and who doesn't, because you're afraid of like getting involved into like the people fighting for the championship.
Yeah. And like Verstappen even was calling it out on that time too. Like,
yeah, and people like criticize Verstappen and say, oh, he's been a baby about like, now like, bro, there's somebody fucking cheating and you're seeing it every lap.
Those are the rules.
And like everybody knows the rules, and why is he getting away with that? Like,
yeah,
like what is the reasoning? What and to this day I don't know if the FIA ever said like, well, no, we just allowed it.
No,
That's just a thing.
and then what's gonna happen the next race is that they're gonna come out and say like, okay, so review it. You're not allowed to go over the line anymore. And it's kind of like, oh, now you're clarifying that. Now all of a sudden you're clarifying it, but like Verstappen didn't get a penalty, so it doesn't really matter anymore, does it, you fuckers? Like, like you need to fucking. I mean, you need to address it as it happens, so like the president is not said. We can't have like this like one-time fixes every single weekend as as we get along. We just, I mean, that's not how it works.
I mean, I understand, for example, yeah, you're afraid that you're gonna influence the championship fight, but you know how you get rid of that fucking problem? If you stick to the rules, and now all the drivers know that they shouldn't do that. Even like the championship contenders, not like, I shouldn't do that because I'm gonna fucking get a penalty. Mm-hmm. Therefore, I'm not gonna do this shit.
Yeah.
And then you will never have to interfere in a championship fight about the rules, because the drivers will be obeying the rules every single time.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So,
and if they break the rules, they know it's their fault. Like, for example, if you give Leclerc a warning after he goes over the pit lane, then he knows that he's not supposed to do that. If you give Verstappen a penalty for touching the line, well, obviously he's not supposed to do that. And this is something that like drivers know. Like when they do something like this, that they fucked up. If they don't lift the throttle when there's a yellow flag, they get a penalty. All of these things. I mean, like, come on. Like, I mean, we've been talking about it for weeks now. That like, and it seems just to keep getting worse. Just more random arbitrary rules every weekend. I guess another one that we can quickly go over is the one with Hamilton and Ocon.
Oh, Hamilton and Ocon.
Like, yeah. Ocon got a 5-second penalty for that, and like, it's really bizarre.
Yeah, at least for the incident we saw. I don't know if they had another incident that we didn't see, and that's why he got it. But it was like Hamilton was going for an overtake that wasn't there,
right?
And Ocon turned into him, and Ocon gets the penalty. How? Like, we've had it previously. I think that. And this time was when the Stroll turned into somebody. Who was it? I think an Albon. And that Albon was the one that got the penalty for being there. Same with Mick Schumacher. Like, he's the one causing the accident with Vettel. And like, you don't penalize Vettel. Like, you don't penalize Ocon. But I don't know why they did it this fucking time. And I think it was Hamilton's fault.
I also kind of think so too. I think Hamilton was in the wrong spot. And I say it's questionable. I think he could have left him a little bit more space, but at the end of the day, it seems like 5-second penalty for them. It's kind of disturbing. It's just, I don't know, maybe not the rule that should be there. But anyways, that's it with for the FIA complaints. Man,